That's it. All right. So yeah, let me just do a quick introduction. So I know we have Karen and Kate and Tammy and Vicki, Paula, Jeannie, and Tanya on. If I didn't call your name and you're on the webinar, we welcome you, and we'd just like to know what hospitals we have represented. So if anybody else we didn't get your name there, please let us know. And otherwise, we are going to have two presentations today from a couple of our participating hospitals, and to kind of give us a picture of some things they've been working on, and so you'll have an opportunity definitely to ask questions, and we'll have some other updates and things to follow that. So hope everybody is having a good summer, and we are supposed to have cooler temperatures. Yay! But anyway, our first portion of this is going to be presented by Kate Kopass at Comanche County, and they just actually had their assessment. Kate, seems like forever ago now, doesn't it? But they just actually had their official assessment, so they're waiting on results. So she's going to share with us kind of, how they prepared and the lessons they've learned. So, Kate, you want to take over?
Sure. Now, Ingrid, are you flipping the slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, again, my name is Kate Kopass. I'm the lactation consultant at Comanche County Memorial Hospital in Lawton. And as Becky said, we just had our assessment in July. So we'll kind of give you just a few of our highlights of what happened kind of in June and July before our assessment happened. So part of our biggest accomplishment in the past month, obviously, was actually having Baby Friendly come and do a site visit on July 7th and 8th. I really felt with our manager, Paula, that our organization we had for the assessment and the teamwork we had was really, really good. And it definitely, I think, relaxed me. I don't know how Paula felt about the assessment, but that really helped make things, flow very nicely for the assessment. And so one of the biggest aspects that I was in charge of was the prenatal part, with making sure we had enough in-person interviews and making sure it was really smooth. And so one of the things that I really worked on was our prenatal tours that we have weekly. We really emphasize those at the OBGYN clinic to get those prenatal moms to start coming for the tours. And then after the tour, I would ask the mother if she would be willing to come in on our baby-friendly assessment day and be interviewed. And they were very more than willing to be interviewed at that point after I explained the process. And another way that we really helped get our prenatal aspect for the interviews was we made the OBGYN and the office manager send us at least 5 prenatal mothers information that were 32 weeks or greater after July 7th. And I called each of these mothers and talked to them about Baby Friendly and explained why we needed them to come in for an interview. And most of them were very willing to come in.
And Kate, it's Becky, if I can ask the question. So it was okay from a baby-friendly assessor perspective that you had actually prearranged for those moms to come in to be interviewed.
Right. I did have probably, I had 20 mothers scheduled to come in at every 15 minutes. And we obviously only had 10 prenatal interviews that showed up and were interviewed. But we did encourage them to have an appointment that day. So half of them were, I'd say 3/4 of them were, they actually had prenatal appointments. And I'd say another 1/4 did just come in prearranged.
Okay.
So it did look really good that they were coming from their appointment, and we just grabbed them from the doctor's office and asked them to be interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had, I think, 3 moms that had NSTs, which those were moms that I had already prepared and made sure, you know, they were educated before they were interviewed. So I thought it looked pretty good, too, that these moms were having their NST and the assessors were able to talk to them doing the antenatal testing.
Mm-hmm. So some of them weren't having to make, you know, a special trip, but some did, and then that was still okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Does anybody else have any questions about that slide?
Do you have an idea what kinds of questions they were asked? Was it similar to kind of what we do on the mock surveys?
Right. If you get into the baby-friendly website, it has that prenatal audit for step 3. And those are the types of questions I kind of prepared the moms for, and I told them that this might be what they ask you about. And when I asked some of the mothers what the assessors had asked them, they pretty much did state all of those audit tool questions. You know, if they were given handouts, if the handouts were actually explained to them. You know, they wanted to know if they had been taught about skin-to-skin and rooming in, and they wanted to know if the mother could actually name off those benefits and the reasons why it's important to do that.
That's all my questions.
I think I probably told you this, Becky, but one of the prenatal moms did tell me that the assessor had asked her if she was a registered nurse. And I don't know if that's because maybe we prepped her really well and she was really able to, you know, rattle off the answers. But I thought that was kind of funny and something interesting that they asked this prenatal mom. So
yeah, because they will not want to interview anybody who's an employee, especially if it's, you know, one of your nurses, even if they've just delivered, because they're going to expect that they know all of the information. So that's not a routine patient necessarily.
I think we can go to the next slide. So this was kind of referring to some of the biggest challenges in the past month and getting prepared for baby-friendly. We found it, you know, a little bit hard to keep the physicians on board with baby-friendly over the last kind of 6 to 8 months. So probably for 2 weeks before our assessment, we were meeting with the pediatricians, we were meeting with the OBGYNs in their office, and we were, you know, trying to prep them with any questions and trying to keep their attitudes positive about the interview process because, of course, everybody wanted to be interviewed. And so, but they were willing to let us come to their office and kind of prepare them as best we could. And just another big challenge that we really found through the assessment was documentation. And of course, as everybody knows, you know, if it's not documented, it's not done. And so they did audit 3 or 4 of our mothers after they interviewed them. And they really wanted to look at the NIC unit moms that they interviewed. And I think it's probably because the mother didn't come up with the best answer. So they wanted to know when the NIC unit mom had started pumping or were they taught hand expression, and it wasn't documented in 2 of our NIC unit moms' charts. So that was something that was a big challenge, and trying to go back and, you know, really emphasize to the nurses, you have to document what you do for that patient. And so also, too, it was making sure that the postpartum moms knew where the resources were after they went home. You know, if I'm not available as a lactation consultant to tell them, sometimes I think that falls through the cracks. And so some of the moms that deliver and they discharge on the weekend, I don't think it's emphasized to them how to get help when they go home. And the auditors picked up real quick on those moms that delivered on the weekend. And so also, too, just making sure that, you know, the nurses are involved with the PI audit. You can see where we kind of struggle at. So Anybody have any questions about challenges or anything?
This is Evelyn Radishell from Integris Admin. I just called in. We're actually getting our date. They sent us one date, but we're not sure if it's the final date yet here in October. But did you have any concerns or problems with getting numbers of patients for them to interview, and especially in the antepartum area?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if you look at our assessment date, it was July 7th and 8th, and that was just after the 4th of July holiday weekend.
Right.
We also had one of our doctors that delivers a lot of babies. He had been gone for 3 weeks on vacation. And so we were a little bit concerned about the dates, as well as making sure we had enough. And so Baby Friendly, had us compose 6 weeks of patients that had delivered before they came for the assessment. So if we didn't have enough patients on the floor, then they would call those postpartum mothers. But fortunately, we had plenty of C-section mothers, and we had plenty of vaginal delivery mothers on the floor. But they did like to see that we were ready and prepared if we didn't, and we had enough telephone numbers that they could call.
Okay. And had you called those patients and talked to them?
I hadn't called them before the assessment, but I did tell them when they were discharging that if they would be willing to talk to Baby Friendly on July 7th and 8th. And if they were willing, then I put their name down and their telephone number and how they delivered.
Okay. Yeah, and that's kind of what we've been trying to keep track of, too. Okay,
so I
yeah,
just, anytime I discharged somebody, I just kept one of their patient ID stickers, and I just kept it on a piece of paper.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
It was the easiest way for me to keep track of it.
Okay. Yeah, they were wanting to come over fall break, and I was worried about that very same thing, that we'd have physicians out and not enough patients.
It's a bad thing if you have some physicians out.
So I said, can we maybe try another date? So I'm waiting to hear back from them. Okay, thank you.
And Evelyn,
having enough life unit moms.
Yeah, and I don't know if Evelyn was on when you talked about how you arrange to have enough prenatal patients. But sometimes that's the harder piece, depending on the size of the facility. And y'all did a really good job with that.
So basically, one of the things, this is Paula, one of the things that we did was look at, have the office manager of our prenatal office pull the list of everybody who had appointments that day. And so we even did that up to a week in advance and then just went down the list and identified if we knew any of those people that would be good, got with the doctors, and so then we knew what time they were going to be here and kind of scheduled them to come over after their appointment. And just made, we had our prenatal educator call them and, ask them if they had any questions about breastfeeding and those kind of things, just to make sure that we thought that they would be okay.
Okay.
So the Baby Friendly assessors, they did make a comment that they were happy to have seen, they were gotten a prenatal patient from every OBGYN that we had. So they did say something like that. So
good.
Yeah. And again, I think, with our level 2 NIC unit, they had to call, which was fine.
How far back did they call? Because I'm worried that we just don't have very many, and we have a level 2, but we don't have a lot of babies.
Right.
And, 6 months, if it's 6 months back, those patients aren't going to remember.
I didn't do 6 months. I'd only do about 4 to 5 weeks. And I would really kind of screen those families and make sure that they're appropriate and that, that they were really educated and that their charting from their medical record is consistent with the education.
Right.
And so, again, 6 weeks before our Baby Friendly assessment, our on board was really trying to make sure everybody was getting this education and prepared.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, well, Evelyn, now it's kind of it's a tricky thing with the smaller facilities, especially the NICU moms, because they'll want to try to interview 5 NICU moms, but if they just can't get 5, they'll go with 3 or 4, but then of course it's a numbers game too. So if the 3 they interviewed were great, then okay, you're fine. But if there's 1 out of that 3 that misses something, then you're going to get dinged on that. So so that's the tricky part. But they will, because they assess very small hospitals, so they can go back several months, which if you had everything in place, but yeah, we'll mandatory number. That's the other piece of that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I guess we can go to the next slide. So this slide, talks a little bit about the data. Fingers crossed. We hear news in the next 2 weeks. We're at 5 weeks out from our assessment today.
Oh gosh. Yep.
Thing. And so, which is kind of scary because Paula and I are both gone next week for the lactation conference. So hopefully they call us on our cell phones.
Yeah. Do they have the cell phone number for backup?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But in the last, 3 months, definitely we felt like our data reflected 80% for the measurable data that they're asking for. Our chart audits are started in labor and delivery, and hopefully the baby advocate starts that with writing down like the skin-to-skin time and the first feeding of the baby. But then the nurses will continue filling out the data throughout the postpartum period, and then they fill in missing data as needed, and then I'll calculate all of the numbers at the end of the month and report back to Paula with our numbers, and then also any QI that we need to do, which basically targets the nurses and emailing them and educating them, again, about their documentation. So.
I'm just trying to think of any other questions from anybody? Okay, I was there for the first day of their assessment, which I want make sure everybody knows. When you say, Evelyn, when y'all get your date, let me know, and I will try to be there to just help you and provide moral support if you'd like. So I know it helps us learn what they're looking for too, but also sometimes just. And Kate and Paula, if that was helpful for y'all, feel free to speak to that. But I was very impressed with, and Paula, remind me your director's name.
Joe?
That was there. Yeah, Joe. And he's like not just over the women's area. He's over several sections of the hospital, but he was there for the initial, kind of leadership meeting with the assessors. But he stayed there all day. At least that day that I was there on the unit while the assessors were there. So I thought that was very impressive that you had that higher level leadership that was there to support the team.
And I think they appreciated they even said that they appreciated us having constant movement of people for them to interview. So whether it was a patient on the floor or whether it was an antepartum patient or
doctor,
they didn't have any downtime. They really liked that.
They don't want to twiddle their thumbs, so keep them busy.
Right.
Yeah. And they want to make sure they get their numbers of, everybody that they're supposed to interview, because that's to your benefit as well. So anything y'all would say or comment on, say with your initial meeting with leadership and the formula piece and all that happens before they go out?
Yeah, definitely I would say about the formula piece. We've actually been paying for formula for almost a year now. And so we actually had the invoices, but Becky had talked about, they didn't really want to see the invoices. They wanted to see the like a payment statement. So they wanted to see our bank statement where that was paid. So the day before, we actually had our accounting office and our materials office get together And we had our director of accounting come, and she brought all of the invoices and the paid bank statements to where those were paid, and that really helped out because that could have gotten kind of ugly. And we went ahead and did that at the leadership opening to get that out of the way. So we just did that right after the leadership opening. I would also say at the leadership opening, I kind of expected more involvement from our CNO and our COO. They did not really ask them any questions at all. Everything was mostly directed toward Kate and I. They wanted to know, like, basically who was responsible. And I had a big gulp. I went, oh, that would be me. And anyway, so that was a little bit different than what I thought and different than what you would say, like, of a normal, like, a Joint Commission inspection or something like that.
Yeah. And I think it's a little different than what they've done in the past. It may have been, I know Vicki's on the Senate, that they've done, you know, how that happened at Baptist, but my understanding is they pretty much went through the same questions that they ask you on a phone assessment before you schedule your site visit.
I don't even think even into that much depth. They just, it's pretty much, you know, those sample audit sheets, audit, you know, because that's exactly what it is. It's like cheat sheet.
Yeah, there were no surprise questions, really. The only surprise, like you said, is that they didn't really direct anything to the CEO, CNO, you know, any higher level. So I think they just want them there to witness the questions that they're asking, and that you guys aren't making this stuff up, that you are truly going to get asked, and then you're going to get assessed on the things that they're asking you.
The only thing that we thought we had nailed down that we got kind of surprised with was the education piece for our staff. You know, and, you know, we've talked about this before. We used BSEP, and then we used Becky's class, the breastfeeding made easier. They pretty much grilled our nurses about, do you have the 5 clinical hours, you know, how long they've been here. They asked one of our nurses why she was still on night shift and not on day shift. You know,
really?
Yeah, they did. It was a little bit, they wanted to know what their differential was. One of them asked what their night shift differential was. Anyway, it was a little weird, that piece of it.
Yeah, those aren't official questions, so maybe that was just some side conversations she was having, or curiosity. That's interesting, depending on where the assessors themselves actually work. But yeah, because that was the next day that they really grilled on the BSEP stuff, because we've had other Oklahoma hospitals that use BSEP, and and BSEP has been used in other states.
Yeah, they wanted to know how that matched up with their 15 curriculum. Yeah, that's what they were asking for.
Right.
So that night, Paula stayed that night on our first assessment night and figured out which unit from BSEP matched the criteria that they were asking for.
Oh, Lordy. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Oh, Paula.
The next morning when we presented it to them, one of the assessors, she was thoroughly pleased about our homework that we had done. So I think they kind of wanted to see if we would, I don't know.
There's a paper, there's a form in the development phase. It really wasn't a form, it was a PDF file. So I didn't really think it needed to be filled out. And they wanted to see that and how it matched up. So that's what we did.
Yeah, because in hindsight, that could be done ahead of time, and just there was extra verification that this is adequate education.
Right.
So this meets the educational requirements that they're looking for. So, and then this, I guess, for the group to know too that, the assessors are individuals that Baby Friendly USA contracts with, and they train them to, go do this, but they don't make the decision. All they do is they put the numbers down, we interviewed this many people, here's how they answered these questions, and then they put their report together, which is blinded, and then sent off to the external review board. So the assessors don't make the call. So sometimes they may ask questions that make you nervous, but they may not actually know how, and will totally understand themselves how the call is going to be made. Because I've had numerous conversations about the 20 hours and, the 20 clock hours, 15 for the didactic and 5 for the clinical. And the clinical piece, you have to be able to verify that the staff have been validated. Their clinical competency on these elements has been validated or verified in some way. And we all know one nurse, can do this in an hour, and another one can have 20 hours and still not get it. So,
they cannot act that way. They want to just.
I know, and that's interesting. So,
the nurses. So you've spent 5 hours with Kate. Yeah, they specifically said if they had been with me, and some of these nurses have been here for 20 years. So they might not have been with me, but they have spent time with other people.
Right. They've spent time with someone who is a qualified evaluator. So it may not, and it may be how you counsel your staff on how to answer that question too, because or what you say as far as, because when they ask you, well, how are your nurses oriented and how do they get their education? Because if you say, well, they did this BFUSA and there's the 15 hours, and then they actually, get a day with Kate for the clinical piece, then you better be sure that everybody got a day with Kate. Or you say, then they get time with a qualified evaluator. And if some of them, it might be with the LC, it might be with another nurse, it might be in Becky's class. There's depending on when the staff came in. So it might be just looking at how you phrase that. So they're going to then take it literally. Well, not everybody got the day with Kate, the LC, so therefore they did not get their clinical training. But, well, yes, they did in another way.
Right.
So, all right. Any other questions from anybody for Kate and Paula?
Becky, it's Karen Blackburn. I have a question, and maybe I shouldn't ask it. I should do the homework myself. But since most of us use BSAP for a lot of our staff the last few years, is that something that we could, see of how you put that together to show them that it met those requirements?
Yeah, I just made a note to myself too, because this just hadn't come up before, and I actually, when Kate and Paula were texting me that night after I had left, and now they're asking all this stuff about BSAP, and I was calling Linda Miller, who was in another state visiting family, and she was, calling me back to tell me, because they've had hospitals, they've had, their program used in a number of other states, and hospitals that have passed their assessment, with BSAP. So we just haven't had that specific issue arise here.
Right.
That's a done deal. It's a known entity. But to individual assessors, it is, kind of an Oklahoma homegrown product, if you will, although, very quality product, but they're going to be less familiar with that than some of their online trainings and so forth. But, yeah, no, I've made a note. I think we can easily go through that.
I've made myself notes in the book, like this is, whatever topic, to try to do a little bit of it myself. But if we had kind of something official that, compared the two together, that would sure help a lot, I'm sure. If we get asked the same question. Yeah, Karen,
we can do that.
If we pass and that was accepted by them, I share freely. You may definitely have what we have. I appreciate that.
You can send that to me, Paula, and we can have that available for anybody else who encounters that. And I was going to I can contact Linda Miller and Judy Harris about that as well and see if they've had to do that, for another hospital or something. So that should be a non-issue. But when you're in the middle of your assessment, it's a very stressful thing to be surprised with. Wouldn't you say, Paula and Kate? You had to say, oh my gosh. All right. Any other questions for the Comanche County team? We will keep our fingers crossed, guys, and And then we're getting ready to turn over to Jamie that in the middle of this, just to also share that we had another hospital, Cherokee Nation, that was assessed a few weeks before y'all, and they've gotten their results already, and we just found out that they've passed. So we now have officially three baby-friendly designated hospitals in our state. So we'll be, sending out a little more notice about that, but congrats to them. And so now Jamie from OU Medical Center is going to share with us something they've done just recently.
Hello.
Hey, Jamie.
Okay, so you already introduced me. I'm the coordinator of the lactation department here at OU, and we are currently in the development phase of Baby Friendly. So we recently got a new director of women's services, and she actually came from a hospital in Oregon that was already Baby Friendly. So already knowledgeable about Baby Friendly, and she wanted to start with a breastfeeding support needs assessment to the staff RNs and also the physicians. So we came up with a confidence scale to survey for the nurses and put that in our online education system, or should we call it HealthStream.
Mm-hmm.
So they took the survey, and it basically goes down the 10 steps. And so it's the risk of formula feeding, the benefits of breast milk, and the latch and positioning, benefits of skin to skin, hand expression, supplementing a baby, proper pump setup, and how to cup feed and formula preparation. And we had a pre-text question on there for them to put any other needs that they may have that weren't mentioned in the survey. So. And then at the bottom, our last question is, would you be willing to become a breastfeeding coach? So what program we're starting here is called the Breastfeeding Coaches, and those are going to be staff RNs that are trained with a specific topic, and then they're going to be assigned so many RNs to go and train them as well. So it's a system to help get education out there, and it's going to be not just for baby friendly, to be continuous. So as we come up with more topics or things change in the lactation world, then we're going to be doing these little trainings, and the breastfeeding coaches will go out and train the rest of their coworkers. So hopefully this will be beneficial. And so you can switch the slide.
So Jamie, can I ask real quick? When you put that assessment on HealthStream, what was your time frame? Like, how long did you give them to get that completed? How long did it take you to get through that, I guess?
We gave the nurses 1 month to get it completed.
And did you feel like you got a pretty good response rate? Or maybe you're going to talk about that.
I am.
Okay.
It's on the, yeah, we did. And we decided to do it as a confidence scale instead of just a yes or no, so that we had a feeling they may know, a little bit about the benefits of breast milk, but do they feel very confident about that? So that we could get an idea that they were a little confident or less confident maybe, or they were really confident, so we could focus on exactly where we had to educate. So the biggest challenge is we did not get, we haven't really gotten a lot of feedback from the physicians, so we're still working on that needs assessment so that we can provide them the education. But from the nurses, the next, you can switch it to the next slide. The data says breastfeeding support needs assessment. We had on the mother-baby unit, we had 80% completion on all units, really. The antepartum unit, and then also the women's clinic was all about 80%, and then L&D was 70% completed. So we had a pretty good turnout. The topics that I listed down here are from the highest education needs. So this is what the nurses were saying that they needed education on. The highest was the cup feeding. So Hand expression was next. The medical indications for supplementation, latch and positioning, formula preparation, then benefits of breastfeeding versus the risk of formula feeding, use of pump, and then skin to skin. So that was the hierarchy there. And then on the comments, we had about 7 requests for 24-hour lactation support.
Yep.
So then we had 3 requests for education on nipple shield use, and 2 for bottle feeding, and then the rest we had like 1 request each for like milk production, mastitis, support for working moms, class for antepartum moms. We have a big unit with antepartum moms here. Supplementation options, cultural breastfeeding practices, latching with flat nipples, lactation supplies. They wanted more supplies available to the night shift. Positioning and safe formula preparation is what they said. So we plan to have a leadership meeting next, and we will decide the curriculum for each topic, and then our lactation group will be assigned a breastfeeding coach, and so lactation will be teaching the coaches, and then the coaches will have so many of their coworkers to teach, to pass the information on. So hopefully we can spread the information out there.
So Jamie, it's Becky here. What would you say about the staff education that they've had, prior to this assessment? Because y'all done quite a bit of staff ed there, but maybe you think you have a lot of new nurses that haven't had it, or
a large turnover going on, and we have really for the past year. So it's just like as they come in, they're leaving again. So we're having a problem with that right now. And they do all the new nurses still get the orientation class that I teach for it's 2 hours. Then it's different once they get out on the floor and actually start working with moms. I think they'd like more experience. And in orientation, they're just so overloaded with all this information. Orientation here is 10 to 12 weeks or something. And then they get 1 clinical day spent with the lactation. But these are the ones, and some of these may be from the nurses that have been here for a long time and didn't get any lactation education when they started, or didn't get clinical days or anything. So it's just refreshing them too. They just, want to touch on that again because they may not have, done cup feeding in a while. It's not like an everyday thing. So,
yeah. So did you get feedback from staff about just being asked to do the assessment? Did they like being asked?
They did, everybody did, was really willing to get on there and get it done quick for us, and a lot of them are really excited to be breastfeeding coaches. So we had, I think, 43 nurses, or 47, I think, nurses tell us they wanted to be a breastfeeding coach. So, got a lot of interest in lactation.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right. I'll be quiet. Okay.
That's where we're at. That's what I have. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Jamie?
I have a question. This is Ingrid. Can you hear me?
Hi, Ingrid.
Okay. So the breastfeeding coaches, that's going to be like a supplemental education or supplemental support there. That's not going to be a replacement for the requirement to have them trained within 6 months of their start date or anything.
No, the breastfeeding coach is just supplemental, so it's just going to be keeping the staff involved and up to date on any new lactation issues. So we're going to start out probably doing more topics like every other month, and then we'll probably slow it to once a quarter or something like that. So, but just to keep them involved in lactation and keep the education ongoing and refreshing the nurses every now and then as well.
So you say like a topic every other month, so you're going to maybe do some extra training for the coaches, but then they will disseminate to the staff that they're working with on the floor?
Right, because the leadership group, the managers and I are going to do the curriculum and decide exactly what is going to be taught. And then we're going to have the lactation consultants teach the coaches first. And so they'll have a couple weeks to find their coaches and teach them. It only takes 10 minutes or so. And then coaches will go on and we'll probably give them, I don't know, a month or so to get their teaching done. And then they have to turn in their sign-off papers. They've done all the employees.
Well, that was my next question, is there going to be a way to document it? Have they actually reached everybody with a certificate?
Yeah, everybody will have a sign-in sheet so they can get all their people checked off, and then they'll turn those into education, and they'll track it through HealthStream. So the educator puts those in HealthStream so we can look at the transcripts on there and find out and who did it. So.
Those kinds of things, the documentation of the staff training is important for the assessors to be able to see if they ask. And typically what they'll do is the staff that they interview, they want to see that, you've met the initial 80% of all the staff have met, have gotten all the education, or 90%, whatever, but they're 80% bar. But then usually when they're there for a site visit and the actual assessment, the 10 staff that they interview, they might want to see in more detail. I want to see each of these nurses that they completed the 15 hours and the clinical piece, and where did they get a certificate of completion, where is that documented? So
we should be able to pull all of that up on HealthStream. So
good. Anybody else? Any other questions for Jamie?
Yes, this is Jeannie Campbell in Stillwater. Hey, I had a question about the teaching the coaches. We do own some of the offices and the employees of the offices, so would we have a coach, like an office manager, and they could teach the office people, or how do you address that?
Okay, so let me see if I understand. Are you talking about non-RNs or?
Right, like we have people that work in the doctor's offices, and I understand you are supposed to show that they were trained if they're employed by your hospital, and so they're nurses that work over, let's say, for an OB. So I understand that they have to have some knowledge and training too. So could we train one of them to coach the rest of the nurses in that clinic, or how would you go about that?
You can. We're going to train. We have one clinic that's hooked on to our hospital, connected to our hospital, and we're going to have one of the staff nurses get breast. So they're going to go back and teach the rest of the clinic.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
Oh, sorry. Okay. We have one clinic here that we're going to have a breastfeeding coach. It's one of the staff RNs, and she is going to be a breastfeeding coach, and she'll be trained by the lactation consultant, and then she'll take that back and train the rest of the staff nurses at her clinic. So.
Okay, that's great. And this is a little off topic, but how do you get, like, magazines and all those things out of the offices that you own? And make sure they don't keep coming in.
You have to have a good office manager. Throw them away. We did actually write to one of the magazine companies. Sorry, this is Kate from Comanche. We wrote to one of the magazine companies. I think it's American Baby, and we asked them to stop sending it to us. But they either didn't get our email or they don't care, so they keep sending it. But our office manager just throws them away as soon as she gets them in the office.
I know, it's that people hate to throw away free stuff. And they think, we can just throw this out there and somebody can use it. But, it's just, don't worry about the baby-friendly, the marketing piece. But if it was a magazine that came in that you knew had bad, outdated information in it, would you, even though it's free, would you put it out there for your patients? No. So, that's, you have to look at how you explain to people what you're trying to do, I think. You want to make sure they're getting objective, evidence-based information.
This is Ingrid, and I worked at the OU Physicians Clinic. I have an outpatient lactation office there, and we did the same thing, American Baby, and then there's some other magazine that shows up. But they're basically just glorified incidental advertisements. And so I talked to some of the first line support staff, like the people that check moms in, and they were like, oh, there's not a problem with this, and so I kind of said, hey guys, this needs to not be out here, and finally went and talked to the clinic managers and just said, this has got to go away. And finally, when they were on board, the stuff comes and it goes straight to recycling now.
What about I'm hearing some pushback, like, what about the moms who plan to bottle feed straight from the start? That's not helping them, or that's,
it's still advertising. It's not
but it's still right.
Information. Yeah.
Yeah. See, so the point is that it's got to be commercial-free care, and so just because, like, if I go to my OBGYN and get a prescription for diflucan, well, that may help me out, but I don't need to be using a diflucan pen or Post-it notes or whatever that has that advertising on there. So anybody can Google baby registry or information on formula feeding, or they can get that at the hospital, or they can ask their provider if they have specific questions, but they shouldn't be getting that from us in the waiting room.
In a commercial, yeah.
Right, in a commercial.
Yeah.
Right, because like there were Babies R Us gift registry booklets that were over in the clinic that says that essential items for a breastfeeding baby, and one of the things was a couple of bottles and some formula just in case. And I was like, you guys, you can't have this out here.
Well, and then if you look at what, and I know you know this, but the ads that are in there, the ads are for the brand name most expensive types of formula. It's not going to have an ad for Walmart formula. And that's not teaching them, you don't want them to get their information from that avenue. You want to be able to provide them, like Ingrid said, commercial-free and objective information. We don't care what formula you use, but here's how you keep your baby from formula feeding.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Jamie? We have just a few more minutes, so Ingrid?
I think we have a couple of announcements we can go over. So there was a few months back there was a request from several people. We did an assessment of all of our participating hospitals as far as what are the things that you would like to see from the Becoming Baby Friendly in Oklahoma project, and several people had a request for a listserv. And so a listserv is in the works. It's been approved. It's up and running, but as far as how to manage it and add people in and make sure the content is secure, that's something that I have to complete a training for, and I've not done that yet. So in the next month or so, we should have that up and running, and I will send you all email information on all of that.
All right. Want me to handle these next ones?
Sure. I mean, either way.
Or you can. You do it.
Yeah, so if you all have not registered yet for the OKLCA conference, it's August 28th, and it's here on the OU campus at the Famous Center at Children's Hospital. It's the same place we have the Becoming Baby Friendly in Oklahoma annual conference. And that's where OKLCA, I think this is where it's been every single time. So there is a link to that on our website, on the OBRC website. And you all can log in. I think it's $60 for non-members and $30 for members, but don't quote me on that. And there's a lunch meal provided. And then our next webinar is September 9th at 3 p.m. So the webinars are always going to be the second Wednesday of the month at 3 o'clock. And it's going to be a presentation by Ann Merwood, Rooming In, Are You Really? So how do you know if you're meeting the criteria there as far as baby-friendly is concerned?
And then I think it's do we have Healthy Start for October?
But I haven't confirmed that with her, but that's what we are anticipating.
Yeah, I had a meeting with them. Their new director just started last week. So originally this webinar was we were going to have Healthy Start present about their program, that they were in transition between in their leadership, so they asked to be booted back a couple of months. So so that's you'll learn more about that, but that's a federally funded kind of separate organization, say from the health department or Children First, but they have federal funds to provide community support, and in particular home visiting services. And so, I've done some breastfeeding training for them, and they particularly deal with a lot of low income and families of color. And there's a Healthy Start in Oklahoma City area, Healthy Start in Tulsa, and there's another smaller location.
It's Logan County.
Is it in Logan County?
Because they said it gets Oklahoma and Logan County.
Okay. So they'll share more about it, and they have some goals in their new grant funding related to breastfeeding as well. So trying to help network with community resources for our hospitals. So anyway, so Ingrid, once you do that.
So the other thing is the documentation reminder is that if you're in the development stage or later, you should be collecting data, and there's a form that you should send to me every month. It's due by the 15th of every month. Several of you were participating in the late preterm initiative, and we were accepting that data. That was only for a year, so some people are still sending it, and we like it because it gives us a much more information, but it can be kind of an arduous task to complete all of that documentation. Our form is much simpler, so you may send us either. If you have been doing LPI and need a copy of our form, just let me know, and I'll send you the other one. And then we switched from once a year enrollment to rolling enrollment. So if you're on the phone call, your hospital's not quite committed, you can enroll at any time. You can contact me or Becky, and we can walk you through that process. And there's an enrollment stipend to kind of help you get going.
All right. Well, I think our time is almost up. Any other announcements or questions from anybody? Well, I can also just kind of give a sneak preview. Of course, this is World Breastfeeding Week and National Breastfeeding Month, and the month that the CDC releases their data for the nation and the state data on breastfeeding rates. And I will actually probably be presenting this for the first time at the OKLPA conference. But in all 5 breastfeeding data points that they monitor, such as breastfeeding initiation, any breastfeeding at 6 months and 12 months, and then exclusive breastfeeding at 3 and 6 months, Oklahoma increased significantly in all 5 categories from last year, and we are no longer in the bottom 40 in any single breastfeeding category. So that's very, very exciting news, and we're actually above the national average in exclusive breastfeeding at 3 months. That could not happen without the work that y'all are doing in the hospitals to help these moms, get off to a good start. So very, very exciting news to see us making some good progress. Anyway, all right. Well, we will let everybody get back to other responsibilities, and you know how to get hold of us if any needs come up in the meantime, and we will, be in touch. And Evelyn, when you guys get your date, you want me to be there for at least the first day of your assessment, or if you want a little mini mock, let me know that.
Okay.
All right. Okay. All right. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye. Bye.